The session itself is on the implementation of LTO 6 technology by Alpha TV, who are an Athens-based television station. I'd like to introduce you to Laura Laredo from HP, from Hewlett-Packard, and also Kostas Columbus from Alpha TV themselves. So I'll hand you over to Laura. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you know that Dutch are the tallest people in the world? On average, the men are 6 foot tall and women are over 5'7". And did you know that there are over 200 coffee shops in Amsterdam where you are allowed to buy cannabis, marijuana, and you are allowed to smoke it there? However, in 2007, a new law was introduced that you were not allowed to smoke tobacco in cafes, restaurants, pubs, or any public places. But if you go to a cafe, you can still smoke hashish and marijuana as long as it's not mixed with tobacco. So you need to make sure you have the right mix on it. And did you know a quarter of the Netherlands is built under the sea level, and the Schiphol airport is 4.5 meters before sea level. And this actually takes me to the LTO technology and how you should keep your data safe for threats that are all the time threatening our data. In this case, in the Netherlands, flooding might be a good threat to your data. So welcome to this program session, LTO program session, where we are going to learn about the LTO technology, tape storage technology, and the amazing linear tape file system, LTFS. This can help you to make storing your essence and your digital video content easier than ever before. My name is Laura Laredo. I'm from HP, but I'm here today representing the LTO program. And with me from the LTO program, we had Ed Childers from IBM, and Olivier Segertin from Quantum is also in the booth. So what is the LTO program? So the LTO program is made up of the LTO technology provider companies, HP, IBM, and Quantum. And we write the LTO drive specifications and also the cartridge media specifications. And we also publish the LTO roadmap. The specifications are open to any organization that wants to purchase a license and can go and make their own products. These will get independently certified afterwards, and if they comply with the specifications of the technology, they will be granted the LTO Ultron logo. There are over 30 licensees, and there are 5 media manufacturers. LTFS, which we are going to look in more detail in a minute, is available with LTO 5 and LTO 6, and it's a free download, and is offered by HP, IBM, and Quantum. And on our website, lto.org, you can find a lot of interesting information about the technology, white papers, presentations, videos. So the agenda for today, we are going to cover some storage issues that probably all of you are facing at the moment. We are going to have a look at why tape is a critical part of the storage infrastructure, and the top 10 reasons why we keep using tape. We are going to look at what LTFS is and how it works, how you can get started using LTFS, and then we'll have a couple of user cases, and we actually have here a customer, Kostas Columbus, from Alpha TV, that he will show us how they implemented LTO 5 with LTFS in their infrastructure and what the benefits they have seen from this implementation. So data is growing by leaps and bounds. There have been many studies about how big the data is growing. And a recent study by IDG, Enterprise Big Data, they survey a number of companies. Their study concluded that on average, an organization their storage will increase around 53% within the next 12 to 18 months. Unfortunately, our budgets are not growing at the same rate as our data that it is storing. And so we need to have strategies to control those costs of storing all that data. Now, there are lots of threats, as I mentioned before, the flooding in the Netherlands, lots of threats for our data. Threats like viruses, natural hackers. Human errors is a very common threat to our data. Most data is lost by human error. And then there are natural disasters, again, like flooding, fires, many things that are threatening our data, and we need to keep it safe from all of that. The backup keeps growing and growing because our data keeps growing, our backup keeps growing. So we have to realize that not all data is alike. There is hot data that as soon as you get it, it needs to be online, readily accessible, quickly to be up for whatever query you need to do with it. But as time goes past, that data begins to cool down. And then you can move it to another medium that may not be as expensive as having it online all the time, like for example, tape. And there is data that as soon as it's created, it's already cold. You don't need to keep it in a hot spot, readily available all the time. So directly, you can archive it and put it in tape in a less costly medium. Another issue is the ability to be able to transport large amounts of data. And we need to do this in an easy way and a low cost. And then the ultimate is the need to protect all your data. The data now is kept virtually forever, and you don't know when you are going to be needing to go back to that data and read it again, so you want to keep it. So why step on the whole list for best practices in the data storage? But these are the 10 top reasons. First reason is cost. With LTO 6 at 2.5 terabytes per cartridge, 6.25 terabytes compressed per cartridge, that comes out at 2 cents per gigabyte. In a recent study by the Clipper Group, they did a 9-year study comparing SATA disks to an LTO 5 library, and their study concluded that the cost of the disk system was 26 times the cost of the average tape system. And most amazing of all was that the power and cooling of the disk system alone was more expensive than the total cost of ownership of the tape. Now, if we think about that, if a vendor were to give them a disk system for free, it will still cost more than if they went off and buy a tape system. It's easy to manage. An administrator could normally manage around petabytes of data, whereas a single administrator will only be able to manage hundreds of terabytes on disk. It's highly reliable. In tape, we have reliability features both in the tape drive and in the cartridge. For example, in the tape drive, we have read after write verification. This is, we have 2 heads, and when the first head is writing, the second head is reading what we just wrote on the tape. And we always make sure that what we read is what we were supposed to write. If that's not the case, we will rewrite it until we are 100% sure that that data is safe on tape. We'll have servo tracking on the cartridges. So the cartridges come pre-servo tracked. So we know exactly where we are on the tape at all times, and we are able to position at the right place. And bit error rate for tape is 2 grades of magnitude, 2 orders of magnitude better than the SATA enterprise disks. It's 100 times better bit error rate than disk. Data protection. A key best practice is to have your data isolated from your system. offline. So viruses cannot get to that data. A hacker cannot get and corrupt that data that is online. So tape is the best solution for that. It's easy to use with tape automation. It has simplified the use of tape with robotics. And the linear tape file system has made tape easier to use than ever before. It has a long shelf life, up to 30 years at normal room conditions. And it's scalable. If you need more capacity, you just add a new cartridge. It's capacity on demand. It's a green storage. You put your cartridge in your shelf for 30 years, and you don't need to power it up. You don't need to load it. You don't need to do any retention, any reading. Just leave it there, no power. Completely green. It's easy to transport. Now, imagine you have around 20 cartridges in a box. That will be 50 terabytes of data in a box. And you want to take that, for example, say from New York to Los Angeles. 50 terabytes of data and an overnight shift will cost you less than $200. Now, there is no wire that will transport all that data in an overnight for less than $200. It's very easy to transport and very cheap. And it has high performance. LTO 6 is around 160 megabytes per second transfer rate. And that is very, very fast. So what is the linear tape file system, LTFS? So LTFS is a software specification that was first launched by the LTO program back in 2010. And it's an open standard specification. You can download the documents from our website. It has recently been adopted by the SNIA body of storage, and they're about to release the first official specification of the LTFS. So before LTFS, you needed a software in order to write to tape. This software wrote the data on tape in a proprietary way. So that tape now has completely dependency on that software. If you put a cartridge in a shelf and in 10, 20 years' time you want to read it, you need to know what software wrote that tape and what environment, what operating system. So there was a dependency of that tape to that software that made it a little bit difficult to use. Now with LTFS, we have removed that dependency to the software. You can now download LTFS, which is like a driver that goes into your server, and the operating system will identify the tape drive as part of the operating system as a storage device. And it will come up in your screen like a drive letter, A, B, C, same way as if you connect a USB stick, if you connect a hard drive. And from there on, you are able to just drag and drop data to and from the tape like you will do with a USB stick. So we have removed that dependency with the software. So how does this work? With LTO 5, we are currently in LTO 6 technology. So both LTO 5 and LTO 6 have a feature in the format that is called partitioning. What we have done is we divided the cartridge into two partitions. On the first partition, we put the indexes and metadata. And on the second partition, we put all the contents of all the files. So when we load a cartridge, what we do is we read the first partition. That first partition with all the indices get loaded into the memory of the workstation, and from there on, you see all the directory structure, all the contents of that tape without having to go and read the whole tape. It's only when you want to access a particular file that we will go and find it on the tape. You can drag and drop, make directories the same way as you will do with your USB stick. Now, let's see how this works. So you have a tape drive connected to a workstation, and you have an Explorer window, a Finder window, depending on what operating system, and you just click, drag, and drop the data from the tape to the workstation or vice versa. Now you can share it. It's completely agnostic. The data on the tape is completely agnostic to any operating system. You can have a Windows workstation, write some data in LTFS format, take that cartridge and take it to somebody that is working in a Linux workstation, and they will be able to read it. They can modify it and send it to somebody that is working in a Mac system. They will be able to read it, modify it, back to the Windows system, all compatible, completely agnostic. And the same with the vendors. The LTO is an open specification and is completely compatible between vendors. So you could have an IBM drive, an HP drive, a Quantum drive, and they will all work together. And you already have your archive. That tape is your archive, up to 30 years in a shelf. If you want to make another copy for disaster recovery, you just copy the same and put it away in the shelf. This is an extract from the MTMP white paper, LTFS hits the mark for media and entertainment. You can find this paper in our website. And there are three key application segments for LTO tape with LTFS in the media and entertainment market. I will not go through all the bullet points on this slide. I will just highlight a couple of things for each application. So, for example, in production, a key use is the huge saving costs you can make by reusing the camera media. So if you have P2 cars, DCAM discs, you can take that data off those media and put it into an LTO LTFS cartridge, and then you will be able to reuse your camera media that is very expensive and you want to make use of that media. In post-production, it's a very good medium to share data. As we said before, it doesn't matter what operating system you have, it doesn't matter what hardware you have or what software you're using, you can interchange the medium between different locations. And for distribution, of course, it's a very cost-effective way to transport data to different points. And at this point, I would like to introduce Kostas Kolombos, is the CTO of Alpha TV, based in Greece. And he will talk us about their implementation of LTO5 with LTFS.
Thanks, Laura. Hi, we are coming from Alpha TV Greece. Alpha is ranked number 3 at this moment television channel in Greece. Greece is at this moment suffering financially, and you most probably have heard of it. And we were in the middle of a situation where we needed a way to get rid of the pro video tapes and find a solution to save money and keep the data as safe as possible. Alpha TV programming is general programming plus news. We have 420 employees at this moment, and we are based in Athens. The problem was that the pro video tapes were too expensive, were way too expensive, and these tapes were also consumables. A tape that we were purchasing now could not exist one day after our purchase or maybe a couple of months after. In the beginning we had Betacam SP, but we decided back in 2000 to go on DVC Pro. For us, that meant that we had to duplicate a lot of our archive from one format to another, and that was done in real-time operations. That means huge hours of work that we wouldn't like to do it right now, again. The Pro tapes have a huge cost. They always demand a VTR to work with them, and the VTRs are prone to maintenance. They need expensive maintenance, and we could not afford. So the solution was for us that we decided to go file-based, get rid of the tapes, but at the end we finally concluded that the tape is what we should use in order to protect our data. We wanted to save some space, and later on you will see a photo of the old archive library and in comparison with the library that we have right now. We needed a system that should be as fast as possible in order to go to air, so retrieval of a movie could be as fast as we can with technologies that do not cost a fortune. And of course, we needed this operation to be as green as possible. What we implemented is that at this moment we only have 8 terabytes of storage that is fast enough to support the playout and the online operations of the files. And I'm talking just for the playout operation in this case. And we applied for LTO tape. We have 2 LTO tape libraries, and of course we're using LTFS on top of that. At this moment, we duplicate each copy of LTO, so one copy is always sent to a disaster recovery site to protect our content. And the digital asset management will be a next step. Why? Because the files inside the LTO with LTFS are the tapes are self-described, and we can't just retrieve the ID if we need to retrieve it. This is a brief workflow where you can see that we have files that are being incoming. Then we will transcode and automatic QC them, put it on a storage where we can get the on-air copies and broadcast them. Then each ready to broadcast file is recorded on dual LTO tapes, one sent to the disaster recovery site, the other sent on the library. And this is an endless loop. We can restore from a library, direct to the server, and play out, etc., etc. What you see as a master file copy, each high definition, let's say, copy that we receive, we keep it as is on the LTO. And since 6 months now, we duplicate this copy as well. So each copy, either the master files or the on-air copy files, are duplicated copies. This is on the left. This is the library, 4 rack units, 70 terabytes of storage. And on the right, it's a portion of the old library that we had that was tens of thousands of tapes. All in all, up to now, we have already backup 70 terabytes on LTO in dual copies. We have reduced our cost by 96%, and even more than that. The Pro videotape cost in 2009 was 120,000 euros, and in 2013, we spent 5,000 for LTO tapes. What I would like to mention here is that LTFS, the library edition or the single drive edition, is just a Windows drag and drop operation. So to the user, it's very, very easy to use and benefit from that. We recently started managing all files from a cinema channel that we own in the group of Alpha TV. So we have one channel that broadcasts currently in SD 24 hours and HD 24 hours. This operation was based up to last year on Pro videotapes with huge cost on digital Betacam. And we make a decision, and since beginning of 2013, they are using just LTO, and it's a complete file-based operation. Technology is here. so we have to benefit of it. And frankly speaking, LTFS was the only technology that I was waiting until it gets finally released. It was not something that I saw during the IBC. I was just waiting because it was, for us, and the way that it operates, it helped us to keep our operations as user-friendly as possible. We have now a disaster plan, recovery plan, because with the other kind of tapes, we just couldn't. We couldn't duplicate each material that we had. Now we duplicate everything. Every single frame of video that we produce is always duplicated. Thank you. Laura?
Thank you, Kostas. So I have another couple of use cases. This is Fotokem. Fotokem is a large lab and post-production provider based in Burbank in California. They provide services for a variety of media and entertainment customers, and including movie productions and reality TV shows. And what they were doing was they were using XD cam disks as their long-term archiving. So they needed something easier to use and something more reliable and lower cost, and they moved to LTO5 libraries with LTFS. What they found was that they could store 100 XD cam disks in a single LTO5 drive. And that reduced the cost considerably. And they were able to reuse the disks for their cameras. And at the same time, they did the same as Kostas just mentioned. They were able to do 2 copies of each content. So they will have 1 copy sent away for disaster recovery reasons. BAM TV are based in San Francisco, and they produce and distribute music videos. What they were doing were they downloaded the content from the camera cards and put them in removable hard drives. What they found was that they were getting an 8% failure rate on these hard drives. Also, they had very limited shelf life. They were taking a lot of space, and they were very expensive. So they implemented LTO5 with LTFS, and they managed to reduce their costs by 70%. And in the first year, they managed to get an archiving of 80 terabytes of data with 0% failure rate. And they did the same as the previous customers. They also, for that low cost, they did 2 copies of their data, so they could archive 1 offsite in case of a disaster need. So, how do I get started using LTFS? Well, it's very simple. You just need an LTO5 or an LTO6 tape drive. You need to download the LTFS software, which is a free download available for, from HP, IBM, Quantum. So you need the driver for your drive manufacturer. So whoever is your drive vendor, you will download the version of that driver. You get a cartridge, you mount it, and there you go. You can start drag and drop your data to the tape. And if you want to actually see it live, we are just here down the corridor, and we have 3 different demos there with HP, IBM, and Quantum showing exactly how this works and how really easy it is. So thank you very much for your attendance. And if you have any questions, now is the moment, or we can take it to the booth and we can carry on the discussion.
I think we can afford a few minutes if anybody's... Has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask? At all? Put your hand up if you have. Nobody?
We have a rifle. A rifle?
Raffle.
I'm going to kill somebody now.
A raffle.
A raffle. Does everybody have a ticket? Yeah? One of these red ones with a number? Let me give you a hand.
Just bear with me a second. Okay, so we have a question. Do you want to do the raffle first? Or should we take a question?
Okay, to be
In case of a single
you get this,
Pass that to you.
and I answer the question.
Well,
I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
sure. In case of using a single-tier drive, you have the metadata on the tape. What if you're using a tape library? Where does the metadata get stored for each content on each tape? And what happens when you unload some of the tapes and reload
Yeah.
others in the library?
So there are different solutions for the libraries, and different manufacturers have different solutions, but more or less they all have the same philosophy, which is you mount the library, and that's your mounting point. So your letter, your B, C letter will be the library, and every cartridge inside that library will appear as a directory under that letter. So when you click in that directory, you will see the content of that cartridge. And normally, once you have seen all the cartridges, that will stay even if the tape is unloaded from the drive. So it will remain within the library and within the directory structure. If you need to access one of the files in one of those directories, if the cartridge is not loaded, the application will manage all the robotics, and it will go and grab that tape, load it into a drive, and recover that file for you.
But you need an application for that. It's not standard.
No, so LTFS is just a specification and a driver. Then from there you build up solutions. There are solutions to the point that they make the drive to look like a NAS device. So yeah, there are different layers of applications. Where is a free download is the standalone solution. When you get automation, there are different versions. There are some vendors that have a basic free download, and then from there on, there are others that you will have to purchase the application that goes around it. And from there, you can scale out to NAS devices.
Let's say that this application company goes bankrupt. Will I still be able to read these files?
Well, this is the beauty of LTFS. Your drives are LTFS formatted, and they will be able to be read by anybody in any application. So there are a good number of vendors and partners that have been developing solutions based on LTFS. And at the end of their, wherever they do the software, the outcome is an LTFS written tape. And that LTFS written tape, you can take it to another drive and read it. You broke the dependency with any software application that write proprietary data on your cartridge. So anybody will be able to read it outside that application. Yeah.
Actually, I've got a really quick question for Costas as well. So is there any period of time where you have your data actually on a hard disk server and then it goes onto tape, or does it just go straight onto tape as soon as the content is broadcast?
In order to use the data for on-air operations like editing or even QC them, we store them on online storage, on a hard disk.
Yeah.
But we have keep this size of the storage as minimum as possible. So afterwards, when we finish with the manipulation of the file, this will end up on the tape.
Okay, so it's archiving.
Yeah.
More than anything. And just one other quick question as well. Obviously, one of the things about sort of hard disk storage is the cost of it continues to fall. Now, is there going to be a tipping point where it gets so cheap that I understand obviously that there's other advantages to tape such as the security and so on and so on, but from a pure cost point of view, is there going to become a tipping point where it becomes cheaper to use hard disk, or is the capacity of the tape side of things, the cost-wise also, you know, capacity going up and cost coming down for tape in a similar way?
I think, yeah, cost. I'm sorry. Cost was the first point on the tape 10 top issues, but there is more than cost, and for this market, the content is your livelihood. If you lose your content, you lose your company. Yeah. Well, for most markets. So it's not just the cost, it's the reliability of tape, to make sure you have it there for 30 years and you can come back and read it. It's all those issues we have gone through, the top reasons why tape is still a very good part of your infrastructure. Cost is one, but the reliability, I think, is probably a second class.
Certainly. I mean, it was very interesting. One of our previous sessions, BT Sport in the UK have set up a completely digital workflow, but they're using tapes as their part of the disaster recovery, yeah, and also for their archiving as well. So I think there is obviously a place for it, yeah, even within the a very elaborate digital workflow. There seems to be a place for tape storage there.
So there is always going to be a place for disk. Obviously, you have to do all your work on disk online very quick, and tape is no good for that. But when it comes to archiving and the reliability of making sure that your data is safe, then tape is on the top there, and you will find that mostly everybody is using tape at the very end of their archiving. And also now for transporting the data with LTFS, we have opened the opportunities for distributing the content and sharing between production, post-production, distribution.
Certainly. We'd better do your raffle before we run out of time. So
okay.
Should we pull a ticket?
Okay. Need a
one.
Yeah, innocent hand. Just one, yeah.
So it's number 409915. 409915.
Yay, we have a winner. Well, thank you, everybody.
Lovely. Yeah, I'd like to thank you all for coming along. We've got another session in about 15 minutes' time. So if anybody does want to hang around for that one, feel free to do so. And I'd just like to say thank you to you guys as well. Thank you. You did a really good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.